Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tablas Creek Instagram live conversation. I'm your host, proprietor Jason Haas. My guest this week is Christopher Gergen, who is the CEO of the Regenerative Organic Alliance, who we are, of course, proud to be certified by. They are the overseers of the Regenerative Organic Certified program, which we think is really a game changer for farming and not just in wine. So I can't wait for you to meet Christopher and hear about all of the things that he is working on with the team at the ROA. But as I always do, I want to give you a little tour of what's going on here as we wait for people to join. So give you a quick update. Big news for us is that we've started harvest. So this is our cellar master, Caitlin Glynn, with one of the first Viognier clusters that came in on Friday. It was not a lot. There were, we got about 3 bins of grapes. So to start, just a right pick of stuff from the top of the hill. We've harvested one other block that was at our own home vineyard, the Haas Vineyard, where we have Pinot Noir. So this is the full circle Pinot Noir. We did the majority of the pick of that on Monday, and I got a chance to do it with my 2 boys. So it's kind of fun, us standing on the back of that truck. What else is going on here? Well, even though we are starting to pick, there is a lot of the vineyard that is still a long way away. So I'm going to give you a couple of pictures to show you. So this is Syrah. You can see we have some dark red berries there, and then we have some green berries, and we have some lighter red berries. And this Syrah is probably still a couple of weeks out. And if you want to compare that to something which is a late harvesting grape, like check out this Counoise. Like you can find a few purple berries if you look, but it is still mostly green. So even though we're starting to harvest, that doesn't mean that most of the things are close to ready. There is a lot more stuff that's a long way away than there is that's close. So we are taking the chance to clean everything in the cellar, get everything ready. We're doing a lot of sampling. The vineyard is particularly pretty to be out in right now. I'm going to give you a shot that I took when I was out there this morning. A little bit of clouds in the sky. Vines look great. The grapes themselves are gorgeous. We've got things like Grenache Blanc that are looking good. And then my favorite of all is always Grenache Noir at this point. It just looks like gemstones of every possible color between green and kind of this deep purple. The next thing to get picked, we're pretty sure, is going to be a selective pick off of our Vermentino, top of our Vermentino block. That looks like that's going to come in Friday. And then things will ramp up probably a little faster from there. Okay, do I have anything else? Oh yeah, one more fun picture. So, you may have seen earlier this week on social media, we have some new pigs. We have little Kuni pigs that are going to be joining the flock, and we got a good explainer from Austin Collins on that earlier this week. If you want to look back in our feed a couple days, that will tell you exactly what we're going to hope they do. Okay, so that is it. I'm going to stop sharing. I am going to invite Christopher to join me, and I can't wait for you to meet him. A couple of days ago. Amazing.
It worked. Hello,
Technology
Jason.
is incredible when it works.
It is. I wish I was supposed to be at a great regenerative organic farm as we spoke with Farmer John, but I got delayed through some traffic on my way to through New York. So I'm in a car, so that we're just gonna have to roll with it.
Is it a regenerative car?
It says regenerate on my license plate.
I love it. Awesome. Well, I gave just a super quick intro, but for those of you who were not watching when I first started, my guest this week is Christopher Gergen, expert in social entrepreneurship, systems innovation, and for the last year and a half, the CEO of the Regenerative Organic Alliance. So, welcome, Christopher.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Okay, so I want to start. You grew up in what must have been a fascinating environment. I mean, your dad was an advisor to 4 presidents, was a journalist, an educator, the head of the Public Leadership Center for Public Leadership at the Harvard Kennedy School. Like, what was it like growing up in that environment?
You know, it's interesting when I think about both of my parents. I often think about my parents as roots and wings. So my mom, we'll talk about my dad in a second, was a family therapist by training. So she really could not care at all about public accolades or, you know, what was happening in the external world. It was a lot more about the internal dialogue and being one with
Right.
you know where you were trying to come from as a good person in the world, and then the Venn diagram between my parents was really that around service and justice and an impact. They served in very different domains in very different ways. And you know, my dad really did, as you suggested, like dedicate his career to public service
Yeah.
in a variety of different ways, both in the sort of public voice as a journalist, and then also within politics and public policy. And he encouraged both my sister and me to really be thinking about, you know, how can we channel our respective energies to try to have meaningful impact in the world. So I actually later wrote a book called Life Entrepreneurs, but it looks at this idea of how do we create meaningful impact in the world and meaningful lives for ourselves. And I think we took that from our parents very much. Like, how do we think about living a life that is internally grounded, and keeps you um, grounded in yourself while you're striving to go, you know, have impact, meaningful impact in the world.
That's super cool. And it does feel like that's a thread through the different things that you've done in your own career, is this idea that kind of idea of social entrepreneurship, or entrepreneurship for the public good. Um, and how did you come to focus on this? I mean, I understand obviously your family must have played a role, but like what was your path into that particular focus?
Well, it's interesting because it was circuitous. I thought uh, the first sort of theory and hypothesis I had in terms of where I was going to have impact was through journalism. So when I came out of college, I went to go work for CNN in Atlanta as a writer for headline news. And it was great. But I had 2 years earlier in 1992, had a chance to go study in South Africa. I was very actively involved in the transition from apartheid, and was really motivated and inspired by the people that I saw, like putting their literal lives on the line for justice. And for me, being in a newsroom in Atlanta, felt removed from that, and I was starting to really think about how do we, you know, where are the levers of change. I got deeply interested in education, trying to think about how you could drive innovation in education, and I ended up down in Latin America sort of with the interest of how do we connect education, technology, and development, basically trying to bring education resources to underconnected communities down in South America. But through that process, I was also down in Santiago, Chile. Fascinating time to be there. I talk often about, like, as an entrepreneur, you've got to really understand the context around you. And at the time, it was 1995, 6 years after Pinochet had been deposed, and there was this reawakening of the cultural energy, but with very little infrastructure to be able to support it and back it up.
Right.
And so I met this group of artists, and long story short, we ended up raising $40,000 and starting this really cool coffee shop, bar, restaurant, which was my taste of being my first taste of taking something from the literal and proverbial napkin and translating it into an entrepreneurial venture that was like physical and tangible, and really was super fun to get off the ground. And I fell in love with entrepreneurship. And so I thought I was hot stuff, like starting this bar from scratch in Santiago, Chile, in a different language. And then I met a guy who had started his own university, and I was like, "Whoa!" That just moved the, you know, proverbial goalposts. And I asked him what he called himself, and he called himself a cultural entrepreneur. And for me, that was the connecting of dots that I needed. I love being an entrepreneur, but I really wanted to think about how we could use basically business for good, and how do you drive. And so I really turned my attention to that combination, saying like, okay, I see the path forward. I really want to look at ways that we can scale up high impact systems changing ideas. I ended up getting a master's in public policy and an MBA, sort of focused on that at that intersection. And I spent my first, decade in the education space, coming out of business school and starting and help co-founding and scaling an online tutoring company, which gave me a lot of experience in terms of like how to scale up an enterprise that was trying to have a meaningful impact in the work that we were trying to do. And so we were able to grow to about 1,000 universities before we sold that company to Pearson Education, and that gave me a chance to pick my head up and think about way I could pay it forward and get more next generation change makers inspired to go after like some of the complex challenges facing our world and try to drive innovative solutions to try to address them.
Great. So it seems like your last couple of positions have focused specifically on kind of farming and food systems. Is that something that you identified as an area of particular need, or was it something that it just felt like it could use the places that you worked could use the skills that you developed? How did that become a focus?
Yeah, so just to connect a couple of other dots, when we sold Smart Thinking, I wrote the book and started teaching innovation and entrepreneurship down at Duke University, and got really interested in entrepreneurial ecosystem development and thinking about ways that we could really reduce barriers to entrepreneurship and small business growth for entrepreneurs in rural communities and in urban communities. So I had gotten connected to farm systems and agricultural systems a little through that work, though it was had a broader mandate, right? Really thinking about how do we help people create more wealth building opportunities
Right.
through ownership opportunities. But I got really interested in systems change and really thinking about, okay, how do we, because for some of these, and there's a great saying that a lot of communities tend to be program rich, but systems poor. And they don't have all of the respective levers working, right? And we need, if we're going to start to address some of these key issues, you need to take a more systemic approach to this work. And so I'd left a nonprofit organization that I had scaled up called Forward Cities to really focus this idea on like how do we deploy capital more
Okay.
effectively into systems change ideas. And I was really working in this intersection between like where could we deploy capital more effectively into systems change ideas that we thought could really move the needle on some of the key issues. And it was through that I got introduced to somebody who became a real friend and mentor. In fact, I'm going to see him tonight, named Tom McDougall, who started something called 4P Foods, that is building a regional ecosystem around agriculture and farmers. And and the more that Tom and I spent time with one another and pulling.
Okay, if anybody's watching, looks like Christopher in his car has frozen up and crashed out. Okay, I will invite him to rejoin. That sometimes happens when you're not in Wi-Fi. Okay. Looks like he's going to take a moment to have to reconnect. So um, I will keep my eye on when I see the Regenerative Organic handle rejoin the conversation. Let me share a couple of additional pictures while I'm waiting for that to happen. You can see, I want to show you a little bit more about that first Viognier harvest. So there's a lot of, one of the things we're seeing is a lot of variation in size and basically size of berries. So we have large berries and small berries on the same clusters. That's called mule rendange, or hens and chicks in viticultural terms. And it seems like it is a function of cool weather during flowering and fruit set, which we got this year because all of the flowering and fruit set happened a month earlier than normal. So even though our temperatures were kind of average for the time of year, they were cold for when this particular marker normally hits. Uh, let me show a picture that maybe even shows that more clearly. Because it was interesting. It's pretty dramatic. There's another one where you can see some really tiny berries and some normal sized berries, and that generally does not have a negative impact on wine quality. It can even have a positive impact on wine quality because you end up with more skin to juice ratio. It can be a good thing on reds. With whites, it just basically means you get a little less crop, which is not a crisis. Okay, I'm going to re-invite Christopher to join. Looks like he's back on, and hopefully we'll pick up the conversation from where we left it. Okay, just sent through that second request. Okay, you're back.
That's the first time that's ever happened to me. My phone overheated.
Oh my.
Yeah. So anyway, I have you not directly in the sun.
Oh, that's amazing. Great. So let me jump forward to kind of you joining the ROA. So it's been about a year and a half that you've been the CEO. I'm curious if there were like what it was about this opportunity that appealed to you, and what it was, if there was anything in specific that the board of the ROA looked at you and said, okay, this guy can come in and help us get to the next level in this particular way.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to connect the dot then back to what we were talking about before my phone blew up, it was that when you start really understanding the agricultural system and you start recognizing first, all of the negative impacts our industrial and conventional agricultural system is having on our planet, on economies, on our health. And then you look at what could emerge if we actually actively and thoughtfully and systemically transition from a conventional industrial agricultural system to a regenerative organic agricultural
Right.
system. You come to appreciate all of the elegant solutions that can come from that, right? The positive environmental benefits, the economic benefits, the nutritional and health benefits that come along with it. So I just immediately, as somebody who's thought about systems change, I just was like, this is where I want to dedicate the rest of my career. Because if we can actually help to accelerate this transition, we can have an enormous amount of impact in the world. And so was it in that context that the timing was just good? The Regenerative Organic Alliance was looking for a new CEO. The regenerative organic movement is at this really exciting inflection point, right? The regenerative organic certification came online in 2020.
Right.
Tablas was one of the very first ones out of the gate to get certified, and the very first winery to get certified. And then since 2020, you've seen we're now at close to 70,000 farms in 47 countries that are regenerative organic certified, which is remarkable. We've
2
seen our
million
licensees.
acres. Like that's
It's
just a
it's it it's
so,
an, it's an, it's astounding, right? As a social enterprise that is really driven by how do you accelerate the transition to regenerative organic agriculture, to see that level of adoption in that short of a time is really a testament to the strength of the certification, the pent up demand
right.
for being able to have a holistic gold standard that built on the organic foundation, but really was creating these rigorous, transparent,
Yep.
third-party certified standards around soil health, social fairness, and animal welfare. And then you just saw all that growth in terms of on the demand side of things as well. So the board was looking for, I think, somebody who was ready to take it to the next level, who had a background in scaling up high impact systems change organizations. Um, it just was something that I had had quite a bit of experience with, having done this in other industries, and know a little bit about sort of running organizations and building the right like key performance indicators, and how do you strengthen a team, and how do you build the right kind of assets and resources and attract capital to be able to get that work done. Um, so they were looking for that skill set, somebody who could come in who had a background and experience being able to scale up enterprises, uh, and I was looking for a platform and a solution that could really help to accelerate and drive this change. And I'm a huge believer in like actually having these market mechanisms. I think that the
Yeah.
market is a huge driver to be able to drive these systems forward. If we're relying entirely on like public policy or those kinds of things, it's hard to get that done. But if you have
Yeah.
a market mechanism to be able to make that happen, then I think it's scalable, it's sustainable, and I think it will ultimately be meaningfully impactful.
Super cool. So I've people who are regular watchers of this know all of the different ways that I explain what rock certification and the all of the pillars are. I'm curious, like if you are giving your like elevator pitch on what ROC is, like what is that? Like what's your short take on explaining ROC?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, we are, I think, the highest standard in the agricultural industry with regards to certification. So we are a third party certified standard that builds on the organic foundation. So to become regenerative organic, you have to be organic. We talked about organic being our middle name. And then we've built these rigorous and transparent standards around soil health, social fairness, and animal welfare. So we talk about those as our three pillars. So I think for people to understand how it works, as you well know, we are the standard owner at the Regenerative Organic Alliance. But the important thing is that we really work closely with now our 15 certifying bodies around the world who have trained auditors who are able to go and do a independent uh, audit of those respective producers to determine are they meeting the standard or not. And I think that independence and that audit process does two things for this work. One is I think it builds trust within the marketplace because it's independently verified, it's independently audited against a really rigorous standard that is transparent. So that's the way I basically describe what regenerative organic certification is, both in terms of its structure and how it works.
Great. So you were just a part of an ROC focused media tour here in Paso Robles just like a month ago or 2 months ago. I'm wondering, like, what were your take home impressions of the event and the community that you got a chance to be a part of for 3 days?
It was great because that was actually my second time to Paso in this role at Rock. I'm so inspired by everything you're doing because you all have, thanks to Tablas's leadership, but also with the work of the 5 other wineries that are now Rock in Paso, there's just an amazing community of winemakers who have come together and said, we really think that regenerative organic production is the way to go. It makes for a better wine. It creates much more resilient crop systems, and it's something that we want to help to teach other people about,
Right.
both on the consumer level as well as other winemakers. So I just get really inspired when I see producers collaborating with one another, sharing like promising practices. I mean, even at the beginning of this feed, like, hey, here's all the cool things that we're doing at Topless, and I think it's really cool for people to like better understand it, see it. And the other thing I believe, just in terms of wine writ large, is that we now have 47 regenerative organic certified wineries around the world. Uh, and I think we're going to really see some pretty meaningful growth within the wine sector towards regenerative organic for lots of reasons that I know that you actively talk about. Um, and I love it as a storytelling mechanism, right? It's one of the few things that you go to a winery,
Right.
you can actually see regenerative organic production with your very own eyes. You go to the tasting room, and it like literally shows up in what you're drinking, the terroir. You're able to really
Right.
understand the connection, and so I think for consumers. it's such a nice it's such a nice way to get to understand and learn more about regenerative organic agriculture. And given, Paso's uh, proximity to both southern, to LA, I guess you're, equidistant basically from the San Francisco, Silicon Valley, population, and from the LA
Yeah.
population. Like the ability to like be able to educate a huge swath of people on the benefits and value of regenerative organic wine production and regenerative organic agriculture, I think is really cool. And with, that's why I'm so excited about collaborating and partnering and helping to tell that story.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like wine, even though I mean it only represents a small fraction of the rock certified acres, like it has potentially a powerful role to play in translating the ideas to the public because people are used to the idea that like the choices you make in farming grapes have an impact on the finished product in terms of quality. So it's not just a like you're doing this for to make the world a better place. It's like these things you're doing that do make the world a better place are also having positive impacts on the quality of this product. It sounds like you agree that that's one of the
Oh
roles
yeah.
I play.
Absolutely. And, your neighbor, just down the road with Robert Hall, for example, I think has a really cool experience with the fact that they're so convinced, they tested one block around regenerative organic and they saw the benefits and results of that. And they decided to go all in on rock, except for one block that they've kept conventional. And it's pretty neat to go walk around Robert Hall and see the conventional and then go see all the rock and see that side by side and see things like look at the difference in temperature, for example, in terms of the soil between
Yep.
a bare cover than cover cropping. And then you go into their tasting room and you're able to actually have a side by side tasting with the conventional Cab Syrah blend that they've got and their rock Cab Syrah blend that they've got. And it's meaningful. Like you actually can taste the difference. So yeah, I am a huge proselytizer. Every single place I go, I'm bringing Topless or or Robert Hall or any of the other rock wines I can find to my friends and say you gotta drink this. It's much better. It's great.
Cool. So you've seen a huge amount of growth, like really quick adoption of across. I mentioned that 22 million acres statistic, which is incredible. I keep having to update my literature because I think the first time that I had was like, I can't believe they've gotten to 11 million acres. I feel like every few months I'm like, okay, that's out of date. It's even more. Like, what do you think needs to happen? Like, what's going to get you to the next phase of growth?
Yeah. So, when you talk to farmers about why they don't transition, because I think that's important to understand, like what are barriers to transitioning to
Yep.
regenerative organic agriculture? You hear three things: cost, knowledge, and market. And most of that's market, right? So if there is not enough demand signal, farms are not going to transition because there's a time, cost, and energy that
Right.
requires that transition. And so it became very clear to me when I did a listening tour when I first came into ROA, talking to farmers, like we really needed to be focused on helping to drive demand. Like demand is a huge, as we think about our theory of change, it's like we talk about this flywheel of impact. So we look at this idea of how do we drive as much demand as we possibly can, and then how do we help to strengthen the supply to be able to meet that demand, and
Right.
then how do we capture the benefits of that transition? So, what are the environmental, economic, and nutritional benefits of that transition for all the things we talk about, and feed that back into driving more demand? So, how do we capture and then amplify impact, drive more demand, transition more supply, capture more of the benefits to drive more demand? So, try to get that flywheel going as much as we possibly can. So the big thing that we're focused on right now is trying to address like what are the barriers to that flywheel going, and
Right.
the barriers on the demand side are we need to continue to increase consumer awareness of and demand for regenerative organic.
Right.
I think consumers there's a growth in conscious consumerism. We see regenerative organic products in retail through spins data and everything else like that is the fastest growing certification product in the marketplace. We see pretty regularly like 15 to 20% growth quarter over quarter, year over year, which is great. So when
Yeah.
you have more consumers looking for it, more retailers want to carry it, and when more retailers want to carry it, then more brands want to adopt it, and then you're able to really help to drive that. So we want to do as much as we possibly can to help to drive consumer awareness, retail engagement, brand adoption. That's a huge part of our focus. When we talk to all of our producers, they're like, if ROA can do anything as a movement building organization, it's to do just that. Like, how do we drive that? How do we accelerate the transition to regenerative organic agriculture through a demand driven strategy? And then how do we work with partners like the Rodale Institute and others to be able to help make sure that farms have access to the technical assistance and the support and the resources they need to transition? So we love working in collaboration and partnership with others. We love all the work that we see producers doing to be able to learn from one another and connect with one another. And we want to try to foster that as much as we possibly can. And then the big thing is being able to make sure that we're capturing those benefits. We think the big unlock there is going to be actually around some of the nutritional benefits
Yeah.
that we see in regenerative organic products and ingredients. Just because if you see a side by side comparison between like a regenerative organic product and a conventional product, you just see that the nutrient density is much higher.
Right.
Obviously, because it's organic, it's free of chemical residue. So you just get all of these benefits, and consumers are just, I think, moving in a direction where they're moving away from like quantity calories towards quality calories and really thinking about ways like being much more thoughtful about what they're putting in their bodies.
So,
And I think all of the work that we're doing speaks wonders to that. And then you layer on, oh, by the way, this is helping to sequester more carbon, and it's rebuilding our soil organic matter, and it's saving water, right? Like all of that plays out. And then of course, as through your pioneering work, that like the resilience of that is huge, right? So once you make that transition to regenerative organic, you get all of the benefits of resilience. And I think as we're seeing more and more climate shocks, you're seeing huge fluctuations in terms of the cost of chemical, fertilizer and pesticides. You're seeing more and more brands say, we want surety of supply. We want to, make sure that our supply chain is much more resilient. And you see farmers saying, hey, like like I think, most wineries, for example, that go regenerative organic can sometimes save up to 70% of their water, right?
right.
In contrast to conventional. So it feels like, there's, from my vantage point, there every single thing adds up to this transition. We just need to make sure we're getting out there, amplifying, and building the business case for it.
Yeah, I mean that really drives home one of the things that I thought was the most compelling about that one block challenge that Robert Hall pioneered is that like they found that it was a little bit more expensive per acre to farm regeneratively, which whatever, this is not a surprise, but that they got more yield off of the blocks that they were farming that way to the point that it was actually less expensive per ton of grapes and the quality was better. It's like all of
Yeah,
this sort of additive stuff
yeah,
that, people don't realize that like those chemical companies, they are not in this for your benefit. I mean, they are trying to make as much money as they can off of the farms that they sell to. So kind of getting into a system where you're producing your own fertility, you're producing your own weed control, you're producing your own pest control. Like these are things that are going to have real savings in addition to the costs. And if you can do all of this and have it be even kind of close to what it would have been otherwise, and all of those other benefits in terms of quality and um, lack of residues, lack of other inputs, all sorts of things. It's really like the clearest example of a win-win that I know in our business.
completely. I don't. It's That's why I love these elegant solutions, right? You're not having to. Um, you have all of the science in your favor. You have all of the flavor in your favor, and you've
Right?
got a great story to tell. So it is a complete win-win-win-win. I think the key thing, we talk a lot about this J curve context. Like the first, when you make the transition, there is a cost of that transition. But once you get to regenerative organic, you start to really see some of the benefits that you were just talking about. You see some top line benefits, and then you really see some of those bottom line benefits because of the increased resilience and the improved flavor. And then ideally, you're able to continue to drive that demand, and it continues to drive that work forward. And then hopefully, at some point, we're going to get to a place where uh, we see, and you see this happening in Europe to a certain degree on the compliance side, and maybe we'll get there in terms of the US, but like just the ecosystem benefits. Like, how do we got to pay farmers for some of these ecosystem benefits? Like, if they're sequestering carbon, if they're saving water, if they're, increasing biodiversity, farmers should get compensated for that. That's a policy issue. That's going to be a long-term fight, but I think ultimately we're going to have to drive that forward. And in Europe right now, if you're a multinational company selling into Europe, you've got to be able to demonstrate that you actually are doing work for continual improvement to be able to improve the environmental footprint of your supply chain, and you have to demonstrate that your supply chain is paying a fair wage to farmers and a fair price. And so rock is a great proxy for that, right? If you are rock, you can sell right into Europe, and that's going to help to drive, I think, some of that adoption as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've been telling people that I think it's the clearest, like, single thing you can look for to know that the externalities of the decisions that farm or that producer is making are positive on the world at large, from the people to the neighborhood to the environment. So
Yeah,
it really,
yeah, we want to get to a place where you see that rock logo, and it's a clear signal that uh, you know great producers like Tablas are doing it right, right? Are really that it's chemical free, obviously because it's organic. It's really driving positive nutrient density in the soil, and ultimately it's we're doing right by the farmers that are farming, and they're paying their workers a fair wage, and it's better for them. Like, that's what all of that we want to have conveyed in being able to see that rock logo in as many places as possible. And when you go to a grocery store now, you're seeing it in produce, you're seeing it in protein, you're seeing it in pantry. You got our great friends at New Barn who have like a billboard on their eggs, and then you go to the wine section and you see it in wine. So it's great.
awesome. Well, I cannot believe that it has been a half an hour, but it has been a half an hour. And I try to keep these to that length. So how do people learn more? If people want to follow your work or follow the ROA or the progress of Rock, like what's the best way for people to stay involved?
Yeah, great. So I think an easy way is to go to newsletter every month. Our team does an amazing job with that. And there's a lot of, it's chock-a-block full of good information in terms of the newsletter itself. We've got great social media channels, obviously, through Insta and LinkedIn. And then, we put a lot of stuff up on our website, regenorganic.org. So lots of places do it. And I try to post stuff out through my channels as well. So there's lots of ways to get plugged in. And we really are, we call ourselves the Regenerative Organic Alliance for a reason, right? Organic is our regenerative first name, organic middle name, but Alliance, this is a movement. Like, we need to be working together to be able to drive this movement forward. So the more that we're able to tell these great stories, do things in collaboration with one another. And one of the things that people often ask me, like, what do you like most about your job? And I love a lot of things about this work, but the community is first and foremost. We have an amazing team at ROA, but we just have such a cool community of people who are doing this work together. And on our website, by the way, Jason, you'll appreciate this, about to launch a really cool rock wine directory that my 18-year-old son built on AI. And it's great. It's really awesome. And I can't wait to go live with it. But we're hoping people are going to use it for like rock wine tours. Hey, heading to Paso Robles. Like, how do I get plugged into all the wineries that are there that are rock? But also, like, again, we're in 47 countries. There's really nowhere you can go in the world where you can't bump into a regenerative organic. And we have 11 more countries in our pipeline, by the way. I think the next one out of the gates is going to be the Ukraine, which is interesting.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Christopher, Thank you so much for taking a piece out of your Wednesday afternoon to join me. Thank you for all the work that you're doing, and I can't wait to see what's next.
Thank you, Jason. Let's keep rocking it.
Will do. Great. Thank you, everybody who joined. I'll be back in a couple of weeks. My next guest will be writer, an advocate, and incredible social media follow, Devin Parr. So stay tuned for that. Meanwhile, thanks if you're out there and you're getting ready to harvest or you're in the thick of it already. Good luck.